These acts of violence against innocents violate the fundamental tenets of the Islamic faith. The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
George Bush may think that this is a military conflict, but the military aspect is nothing more than a physical manifestation of what is at its root a spiritual issue. I believe that the world will have real peace when everyone, including every Muslim on the face of this earth, meets the Prince of Peace.
It's time for Radical Truth with Tony Gurley.
You can thank me later, folks. You can thank me later. Now, if you're wondering, thank you for what, Tony? Folks, in the next 30 minutes, in less than 30 minutes, you are going to receive the most concise chronological compilation of information on the Red-Green Alliance that you will find anywhere. So where should we start off? Should we start off with the beheading of the Christopher Columbus statue? We'll get to that eventually. We're going to start off somewhere else. We're going to go back to May 1st of 2019 to a post made on the Radical Truth Facebook page. And this says, Ilhan Omar, this is not going to be the country of white people. March 13th, 2020, jumping almost a year down the road. This article was published on the Radical Truth Facebook page, and it says, Ilhan Omar Rashida Tlaib featured in Brown Power music video that depicts white police officers as villains. June 2nd, 2020, the name of this article is, In the midst of nationwide riots, we see more evidence of the red-green, far-left and Islamic extremist alliance. June 4th, 2020, on the Radical Truth Facebook page, Islamic group says U.S. riots are an opportunity, quote-unquote, for Muslims to seize global leadership and impose Sharia law. June 9th, 2020, name of this article is BLM leader says group developing highly trained military arm for war on police. June 11th, 2020, name of this article, it shouldn't surprise you that BLM Antifa terrorists in America and around the world are in bed with Islamic extremists and terrorists. June 13th, 2020, article title is Black Lives Matter founder and open supporter of socialist Venezuelan dictator Maduro. June 14th, 2020, this was a post on the Radical Truth Facebook page, and the name of the article that is pointing you to is Milwaukee Sheriff David Clark. Black Lives Matter will join forces with Islamic State. Now, folks, it was really a reminder of something that Sheriff David Clark said in 2015. Folks, he said this 5 years ago, that Black Lives Matter will join forces with the Islamic State. Now, moving on to June 17th, 2020. Name of the article, The Black Lives Matter organization has close ties to a convicted terrorist who was freed by Clinton. June 19th, 2020. Article title, Why isn't BLM demanding that Muslims pay reparations for their long and sordid history of enslaving black people that continues even to this day? And folks, if you were not aware, you should be, because we've done a number of videos on this topic already. Folks, throughout the Islamic world, today, not just in history, today, black people are being bought, sold, and traded. Do those Black Lives matter? Apparently not, because no one in the mainstream media talks about those black lives, just like they apparently don't care about the millions of black babies who Planned Parenthood have terminated, right? June 22nd, 2020, name of the article, Former Princeton Professor, Democrats are using black people, destroying nation. What does this say? former Princeton professor Carol Swain had some scathing words for the newly empowered Black Lives Matter movement and the Democratic Party that has fully embraced the far-left crusade. Appearing on Fox News, Life, Liberty, and Levin, I think that's his name, Swain, an African-American who has taught at both Princeton and Vanderbilt, described the Black Lives Matter movement as, quote, part of the cultural Marxist agenda against America. According to Swain, Democrats, quote, are using black people to advance a radical agenda that will be destructive to our nation, that will hurt all of us, and it's hurting us right now. Folks, it's important to realize that this movement isn't your Martin Luther King Jr. calling for racial equality because we're all made in the image of God. It's not that at all. If it was, don't you think Alveda King, Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, would support Black Lives Matter? But she doesn't. She denounces it, just like Professor Carol Swain denounces it. And why is that? It's because the ideology of this has more in common with what's happening in South Africa right now. The name of this article, South Africa Sets Rules for Confiscating Land from White Farmers Without Compensation. So folks, it's one thing to denounce racism, which we should all do, but you need to notice that this is beyond don't be racist and let's all be equal. It's going past that to where it's promoting reverse racism or racism of whites. And what's the ultimate consequence of that when that spreads? Look at what's happening in South Africa. But continue on the narrative of where we were before that. June 23rd, 2020. You're being duped. Black Lives Matter founder admits, quote, we are trained Marxists. And this was exposed in a resurfaced video. July 3rd, 2020. This was a post on the Radical Truth Facebook page. It says, New York University Muslim professor promotes terrorism against police. And this professor said, when I see burning precincts and burning police cars, it makes me feel closer to Palestine. Now, July 3rd, 2020 as well, yes, the same day, name of this article, why are Muslims trying to get a Christopher Columbus statue taken down? And folks, we are just getting started here. We've already covered a number of news articles, a number of Facebook posts on the RT Facebook page. Again, folks, subscribe, like, follow, share the links, share the videos, even if you do it through email. Get this information out to the world. And when we come back after the break, we're going to get into more vital information that you and other people need.
As a 501c3 Christian ministry, Radical Truth is dependent upon God to provide our monthly financial support, and He provides through people like you who realize the need for this vital work. Your regular prayers and monthly financial gifts allow us to continue our full-time effort to equip the body of Christ with the training necessary to effectively engage Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ. At Radical Truth, we proclaim the truth, share the gospel, and expose Islam. Please partner with us by visiting radicaltruth.net and making a tax-deductible donation. That's radicaltruth.net.
Muhammad didn't know where he was going. Muhammad had absolutely no assurance of his salvation. See, in Islam, the only way a Muslim can have absolute assurance that they're going to go to heaven is by shedding their own blood. They're in utter desperation. But the good news is we've got the answer for them. They don't have to try anymore. Their price has been paid. Blood has been shed. Jesus Christ shed His blood on the cross for them.
This is Radical Truth with Tony Gurley.
Folks, before the break, I talked about a news story where people were trying to get a Christopher Columbus statue taken down. It was shortly after that a statue was actually beheaded. So let's go ahead and get to our first video clip.
Take it down! Take it down! Several towns and cities across the state have seen protests demanding Columbus statues be removed. In Waterbury, the statue in front of City Hall was beheaded by a New York man.
And we need to eliminate the statue from City Hall and not only have the Black Lives Matter flag hanging here, but actually to take an act to continue to stand against anyone that oppresses us.
An Islamist saying we need to take a stand against anyone who oppresses us. What does that remind you of? Well, if you've read the Quran, specifically Surah 2, that's chapter 2, verse 191, or Ayah 191, this is a Yusuf Ali translation, and slay them wherever ye catch them, and turn them out from where they have turned you out. For tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. Now, folks, if oppression is worse than slaughter, then how can you reword that to really get what it's saying? Slaughter is better than oppression. That means the same thing, doesn't it? Oppression is worse than slaughter. Well, then slaughter is better than oppression. That is the case made in the Quran. Now, no surprise, the guy that you just saw in that video clip was also featured in the Radical Truth Facebook post on July 16th, 2019, and this was the day after a news story came out, and the title is Lock Him Up, Designated Terrorist Group CARE Spokes Jihadist Advising Illegal Alien Muslim Invaders on How to Evade ICE Agents. Now, if you add this up with what we're seeing overseas as well, July 13th, 2020, BLM activist calls for revolution in the UK, saying, quote, the police is no different from the KKK. July 21st, 2020, new poll shows majority of Americans now oppose Black Lives Matter. Now that, of course, is a step in the right direction. It'd be better if it said all Americans now oppose Black Lives Matter. And folks, again, there's a huge distinction here between asking the question, do Black Lives Matter, and the Black Lives Matter quote-unquote organization. September 18th, 2020, name of this article is OC star Samaire Armstrong, Black Lives Matter movement, a $1 billion domestic terrorist organization run by Marxist criminals. It says here, actress Samaire Armstrong launched into an impassioned speech in a 7-minute video that saw the OC star hammer the far-left mob, quote-unquote, call out the Marxist criminals, quote-unquote, and uneducated, woke, white, quote-unquote, people pushing the Black Lives Matter movement, and she declared Joe Biden and Kamala Harris out of their minds, quote-unquote. September 24th, 2020, BLM Antifa and the Communist Strategy to Destroy the United States. October 2nd, 2020, indisputable evidence. New video ties Black Lives Matter to foreign communist and terror organizations. October 6th, 2020, no surprise, Black Lives Matter has close ties to Palestinian Muslim terrorists. October 24th, 2020, BLM protesters call for defunding San Bernardino police after officer kills armed black suspect. That's right, folks. Armed black suspect, not unarmed. Now, what do you expect if you are armed and facing the police and threatening the police? It doesn't matter what color you are. June 23rd, 2020. The Arab Spring in 2010 had a lot in common with the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. And folks, if you have watched the previous episodes, specifically 24 and 25, then you have seen the 2-part series called Life During an Islamic Takeover. If you have not seen those episodes, go and watch them right after this. Now, in the Lights Out When Islam Rules America presentation, I talked about this book by Sherry Behrens, An American Woman Living in Egypt, Life During an Islamic Takeover. what did she say in here, folks? In the conclusion, which is a number of pages, giving you all that you need to know and all the action steps. What does she say here on page 225 of the book, which you need to get? Demonizing police is a strategy meant to disable police or remove the police. In America, the Muslim Brotherhood demonized police by promoting the falsity that police target African Americans. They used Black Lives Matter to spread and promote this propaganda. For truthful statistics, see Bandler and Hosko. Now, what is she referring to? Two articles, which, oh, look at this, I have right here. But due to time constraints, I'm just going to give you some points of one of them. And this is by Bandler. This came out in 2016, folks. 5 statistics you need to know about cops killing blacks. First point, and of course it goes in depth on each of these points. Number 1, cops killed nearly twice as many whites as blacks in 2015. Number 2, more whites and Hispanics die from police homicides than blacks. Number 3, the Post's, that's referring to news website, data does show that unarmed black men are more likely to die by the gun of a cop than an unarmed white man. But this does not tell the whole story. And of course, it goes in depth on that. Point number 4, which says black and Hispanic police officers are more likely to fire a gun at blacks than white officers. And number 5, blacks are more likely to kill cops than be killed by cops. Folks, go find that 2016 article, which Sherry talks about in her book. Now, she saw my presentation on the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course ties into this as well. She said, this video is excellent and comprehensive in its subject matter, which is difficult to accomplish in less than an hour, but you did it, and you did it well. Folks, watch that presentation as well. And again, watch episode 24 and 25, which is a 2-part series called Life During an Islamic Takeover. Now, folks, on June 10th, 2020, this post was made reminding you about something that was talked about on the RT Facebook page a while ago. Folks, this 74-second video came out in 2016.
That you are powerful. You can make a whole difference in 2016. You can change the reality of our time. This is the time for us as American Muslims to be in the front, not to retreat, because all of you are leaders. Your votes are your negotiating power in the year 2016. Turn your centers, Islamic centers, mosques, into registration centers for voters. Black Lives Matter is our matter. Black Lives Matter is our campaign.
Basically, you are the new black people of America. If we don't stand, you will see Muslims murdered in the streets. We are the community that staged a revolution across the world. If we could do that, why can't we have that revolution in America?
Staged a revolution across the world. Where would that be, folks? That would be in Egypt. And in Sherry's book, she gives you a day-by-day diary account of what happened during the Arab Spring. Now, did Black Lives Matter to Jesus and Muhammad? Folks, that was episode 17 of our show. And in there, you will get vital information about what Islam actually teaches about blacks and what the theologians and most revered scholars of Islam have said about blacks. So go watch that or listen to that episode as well. Now, folks, when we're getting to the candidates here, we're talking about Biden and Trump. Now, here are some Facebook posts that were made, and this one was on July 20th, 2020. Joe Biden to speak to the nation's largest Muslim Brotherhood-linked PAC. July 21st, 2020. Biden at Muslim Voter Summit says, I wish we taught more in our schools about the Islamic faith. July 31st, 2020. Biden promises to allow terrorists in country if he's president. August 11th, 2020. Voters do not think Joe Biden will complete his first term, making his VP pick the real nominee. August 13th, 2020. Joe Biden courts Islam, not Muslims. September 21st, 2020. Alert. Joe Biden addresses terror-tied group ISNA, trashes America, and Trump. October 2nd, 2020. Evidence that Joe Biden is being dangerously influenced, guided, and likely well-financed by Muslims. October 14th, 2020. Meng urges Biden to appoint country's first Muslim judges to federal bench if elected. Now, folks, here is a video that a friend of mine sent to me. It's actually a compilation of statements that Biden has made recently in videos, and it's combined with a couple of clips from that Brown Power music video that I mentioned near the beginning of this episode.
I will end the Muslim ban on day one. Day one.
There was no Muslim ban.
Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad instructs, whomever among you sees a wrong, let him change it with his hand. If he is not able, then with his tongue. If he is not able, then with his heart.
Make no mistake, people. 2020 is our year. Let's dive into it with 2020 vision. We can see clearly that America is fighting for its very soul.
We all come from the same root here in terms of our fundamental basic beliefs. And I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, for being engaged, for committing to action this November. It matters. Your voice is your vote. Your vote is your voice. Muslim Americans' voices matter. I'll be a president who seeks out and listens to and incorporates the ideas and concerns of Muslim Americans on everyday issues that matter most to our communities. That will include having Muslim American voices as part of my administration.
But getting out the vote, getting our families out the vote, getting our elders...
So you can see this whole music video, especially in that Facebook post on the RT page. But folks, you have a presidential candidate here quoting hadith, things that Muhammad said and did. And if you combine this with those different articles that we talked about, you will see who he's definitely being influenced by. Now, no surprise, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sarsour, and others are featured in this Brown Power music video. And again, this video here has simply been a compilation of that music video with things that Biden has said himself. So, moving on. Again, there has not been a Muslim ban, and if you want the evidence to back that up, watch or listen to episode 11 of the Radical Truth TV show and podcast, and you will see all the evidence there for you. Now, here on October 7th, 2020, this article title is, Uh-oh, Black Lives Matter LA founder says Biden is part of the white supremacist system. Folks, listen to this. The Blaze is reporting that one of the founders of the far-left radical organization in Los Angeles told ABC News that Biden is part of the, quote, violent white supremacist system, and therefore she would not support him. Abdullah says whether it's Biden or Trump who wins in November, she plans to continue raising hell in the streets. In the midst of a protest, she said, a recognition that no matter what the outcome is to any of these things, we have to stay on the streets. Folks, you have it right there. BLM leader admitting that no matter who wins, they're staying out there. Now, folks, I want you to combine this with another video clip. And this video clip is featured in the Lights Out When Islam Rules America presentation.
Nidal Sakar, like most Muslim Brotherhood leaders, attempt, poorly, to sometimes sound moderate. But just keep the camera rolling and it all comes out.
Muslim Brotherhood, I think it might even outlast the United States as we know it, because it seems that the way the United States is going right now.
Or maybe replace it.
Well, look at it right now. I mean, with this Trump thing and the division that you have in America and people killing each other and, getting on each other's throats and acting like vulgar and barbaric as we see it right now. Whatever the U.S. is doing to the rest of the world, the U.S. is going to face. It's going to face, definitely. What goes around comes around. There's no question about it. It will definitely come back, and when it comes back, it's going to be ugly. A revolution is coming. It's not going to be green. It's not going to be peaceful like Arab Spring. I guarantee you that. It's going to be bloody. Like from my perspective, because I'm a little bit more quote-unquote radical in my approach. If seeking justice, that makes you radical, or being radical is a good thing.
There's a goal.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Let your radical freak flag fly.
God bless radicalism.
So folks, at this point, taking all of these news stories and all of these video clips on BLM and the Islamists, or in other words, the red-green alliance, the red is your socialists, communists, Marxists, liberals, etc. And you combine that with the green, which is the Islamists, that's the alliance taking place. So folks, at face value, this is a Trump versus Biden presidential race. That's what you're seeing. That's what's advertised. And yeah, that's technically what's on the ticket. But folks, based on all that we've seen, and as he has said himself, I want a vice president who's ready to be president on day one. And you saw that news story about how his VP is really the real running mate based on, I guess, his own supporters not thinking that he's going to get through the first term. This is more precisely a Trump versus Harris presidential election. And even more so, folks, if you know what's happening behind the scenes, if you know what's happened over the last year and a half of news stories that you just received, technically, folks, this presidential election is Trump versus the Muslim Brotherhood, or Trump versus the Red-Green Alliance, if we want to get technical and more precise. More recently, October 24th, 2020, this Facebook post said, interestingly, nearly 2 in 3 U.S. Muslim leaders backing Trump. The commentary along with this is definitely a shocker. However, another factor that may be involved here is the fact that there are many nominal, quote-unquote, and moderate, quote-unquote, Muslims in the U.S. who know that they would be persecuted by the more devout Muslims, or we should say more devout Islamists. Again, those are Muslims who are involved in both the religious and political aspects of Islam, who are working to gain power here. These nominal and moderate Muslims love American freedom, and the only reason they are still Muslim, quote-unquote, is that it is all they know. In other words, they are ripe to hear and understand the gospel, but no one has shared and explained it to them yet. That's where Christians come in, to get informed and equipped to engage Muslims watch or listen to this new sermon video called What is Islam, Who is Allah, and What is the Christian Response? And folks, on both the YouTube and the BitChute, you can find the video of that recent sermon. And folks, that is our focus as Radical Truth, as a 501c3 Christian ministry, proclaiming truth, sharing the gospel, and exposing Islam. Again, we can't endorse any particular candidate or tell you who to vote or not vote for, but simply inform you about what they stand for and what they have said they will do. Folks, the ultimate solution, of course, is the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. That is what needs to be spread and shared with all people, and all people includes 1.6 billion Muslims. We will talk with you next time on Radical Truth.